Welcome to Tech Week in Review with Adam and Eve.
Your shortcut to understanding the tech news that actually matters.
Exactly. We go through TechFyle, the tech news aggregator,
Yeah.
pick out the biggest stories, the ones with broad impact.
And we try to give you the different angles, the good, the bad, the just plain interesting.
Our mission today, unpack this week's key developments so you're fully up to speed.
And there's a lot this week. AI everywhere, security scares, some cool new gadgets.
Okay, let's dive right in then. First up, something affecting millions. Android 16, Google's latest OS update. Sounds like a big one.
Yeah, it seems pretty significant. They're really pushing on three fronts: user experience, security, and weaving AI into everything.
Right, those three really seem intertwined.
Right,
Yeah.
totally. It's all about making the experience smoother, safer, and, well, smarter, with AI doing more heavy lifting behind the scenes.
So on the user experience side, what's new? I see Material 3 expressive.
Yeah, that's the next step after Material U. Think more fluid animations, better responsiveness. And they mentioned this thing called haptic rumble.
Haptic rumble, like you actually feel notifications differently.
Kind of. Like when you dismiss something, you get a little buzz, I guess. It's about making the digital feel a bit more tangible.
Okay, that tactile feedback could be interesting. And what about notifications themselves?
They're enhancing the real-time stuff. Live update widgets, better lock screen notifications. Super useful if you're, say, tracking a ride share or food delivery.
Oh, definitely. Less need to keep opening the app.
Yeah. And support for foldables and tablets. Still improving.
Looks like it. They seem committed to making Android work well on all sorts of screen sizes, which is important.
Yeah, foldables aren't going away. And I see a note about Wear OS too. Battery life.
Uh-huh. They're claiming a potential 10% battery boost for Wear OS 6 watches using this new Material 3 expressive design. That's always welcome on a smartwatch.
Always. Okay, shifting to security. AI-based fraud detection. How does that work? Well, the idea is the OS itself can help spot scam messages, like those fake texts about an overdue toll bill or a package delivery issue.
Right, those are everywhere. So the phone might warn you.
That seems to be the goal, a more proactive defense against common scams. It's a shift towards the OS itself being a security layer.
But how good will the AI be? Could it flag legitimate stuff?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Scams evolve fast. There's always a risk of false positives, yeah. We'll have to see how well it performs in the real world.
True. What else in security? Blocking setting changes?
Yeah, during sensitive times, like if you're on a call, it might restrict you from turning off key security settings. Bit like a safety lock.
Okay, prevents accidental or coerced changes. And this key verifier.
That's for end-to-end encrypted chats. Basically, it helps verify you're actually talking to the person you think you are, using public encryption keys. Adds another layer of trust.
Got it. Then there's this advanced protection mode. Who's that for?
It sounds like it's aimed at people at higher risk. Think activists, journalists, politicians, folks who might be targeted by sophisticated attacks.
And the Find My Device app is getting an upgrade.
Yeah, it's becoming Find Hub. Big change is support for third-party trackers like Tiles or Chipolos and real-time location sharing, more of a central place to find all your stuff.
Okay, bringing it all together. And the big AI piece, Gemini replacing Google Assistant.
Pretty much across the board, yeah. Phones, watches, Android Auto, Wear OS, even planned for XR headsets eventually. One consistent AI assistant everywhere.
That sounds ambitious. Will it work offline?
In some cases, yeah. Like in cars with Google built in, it'll have some offline capabilities. Otherwise, it'll likely need a data connection, especially on watches or basic Android Auto.
And they're planning for TVs and XR too.
Yep. Android TV integration is planned for the future, and they mentioned Android XR. Gemini could become the main way you interact with VR or AR glasses down the line.
So Android 16 is aiming for this really seamless, secure, AI-driven experience.
That's the vision. But like the sources point out, its real success hinges on developers jumping on board, using the new tools, adopting the design changes.
Right. The apps need to follow suit for users to really feel the benefit.
Exactly. An OS is only as good as the ecosystem around it.
Now, this next one sounds like science fiction, but apparently it's getting closer. Apple partnering with a company called Synchron On. Brain-computer interfaces. Controlling devices with your thoughts.
Yeah, BCIs. It's a huge potential leap, especially for accessibility. Integrating this kind of control directly into iOS, iPadOS, and even visionOS. That's a big deal.
How does it actually work? Is it like Neuralink?
It's different. Synchron uses something called a stentrode. It's an implant, but they insert it through a blood vessel near the brain's motor cortex. Less invasive than drilling into the skull like Neuralink.
Okay, so it picks up brain signals related to movement.
That's the idea. It interprets those electrical signals, the intention to move, essentially, and translates them into commands the Apple device can understand. It builds on Apple's existing switch control accessibility features.
Wow. And there are people using this already.
The article mentions Mark Jackson, a patient with ALS, who's using it to control his Apple devices. It's a powerful, real-world example.
Absolutely. And the FDA has noticed.
Yes, Synchron's tech has FDA Breakthrough Device designation. That usually means the agency sees significant potential and might expedite the review process.
It definitely fits with Apple's long-standing focus on accessibility features.
Completely. It opens up possibilities for people with severe physical disabilities who can't use traditional inputs like touchscreens or keyboards.
It feels like early days, but the potential implications for human-computer interaction are just massive, aren't they? Beyond just accessibility, too, eventually.
Huge potential. We're really just scratching the surface of how BCIs might change things. It'll be fascinating to watch this space evolve.
Okay, staying with Apple, but moving to the car. CarPlay Ultra sounds like a major upgrade.
Oh yeah, it's a big step up from the current CarPlay. But there's a catch, a big one for now.
Which is?
It's launching exclusively in new Aston Martin vehicles, only in North America to start.
Aston Martin. Wow. Okay, so not exactly mainstream yet. What does Ultra actually do differently?
It takes over the entire digital dashboard, not just the center infotainment screen. Your speedo, your gauges, everything gets replaced by Apple design displays.
Whoa. So it's a complete Apple interface for the driver.
Pretty much. Apple's marketing VP, Bob Borchers, was quoted saying they want to reimagine the in-car experience and make it more unified and consistent. It's a much deeper integration.
Launching with Aston Martin.
Yeah.
That's a statement, isn't it? Emphasizing style, luxury.
Definitely. It lets them showcase it in a premium setting, avoids immediate clashes with, the design language of a Ford or a Toyota dashboard. It sets a high-end tone.
Makes sense. Are other car makers getting it?
Apple says yes, eventually. Plans for a broader rollout exist, but no timeline given. So for the moment, it's an Aston Martin exclusive.
So the takeaway is, a much more immersive CarPlay is here, but unless you're buying a new Aston Martin soon, you'll be waiting a while. Its broad impact is definitely future tense.
Exactly. It's a glimpse of Apple's automotive ambitions, but limited availability for now. We'll see how quickly it filters down to other brands.
Right, let's shift gears to something less sleek and more concerning. Cybersecurity. Coinbase, the big crypto exchange, got hit.
Yeah, a pretty major incident. Reports say hackers stole around $400 million and customer data, and they're demanding a $20 million ransom on top of that.
$400 million. Wow. How did they get in? Was it some super sophisticated hack?
Apparently not the core systems. The reports suggest they bribed customer service agents, specifically some working outside the U.S.
So the human element again. What data did they get?
Things like customer names, birth dates, partial national ID numbers, sensitive stuff.
And what are they doing with it?
Using it for social engineering attacks, it seems. Trying to trick users into transferring their cryptocurrency out of their accounts. It makes the initial data theft even more dangerous.
That's nasty. What's Coinbase saying? Are they paying the ransom?
No. CEO Brian Armstrong came out strongly saying they won't pay. And they've offered a $20 million bounty for info leading to the hacker's arrest.
Taking a stand. What about the stolen funds and the affected users?
Well, their SEC filing estimates the potential cost, including reimbursements, could be anywhere from $180 million up to the full $400 million. They have pledged to reimburse affected users.
That's crucial for trust, but how that actually works with crypto could be complicated.
Very complicated. And the fact it stemmed from internal staff abusing access. That's a tough look. It led to terminations, obviously.
Yeah, highlights that internal security and vetting are just as critical as external defenses.
Absolutely. Especially when you're handling that much money and sensitive data, it's a central point of failure.
And this isn't happening in a vacuum, right? Crypto security is always a concern.
Right. The sources mentioned the big Bybit theft earlier this year. Billions lost to hacks overall in 2024. These exchanges are huge targets.
So Coinbase has a massive cleanup job, financially and reputationally. But they're also about to join the S&P 500 index.
Yeah, interesting timing. One foot stepping towards mainstream financial acceptance, the other dealing with a major security crisis. How they handle this will be critical.
Definitely one to watch.
Oh?
Okay, let's stick with transportation tech, but move to autonomous vehicles. Waymo's had a recall.
Yes, about 1,200 of their robotaxis. Seems there was a software glitch.
A glitch causing what?
Crashes into certain types of barriers, specifically things like chains or gates, stuff that might be harder for the system to perceive correctly.
Not good. Which vehicles are affected?
One's running their 5th-gen autonomous driving software, versions released before November 7th last year. They've issued a software update to fix it.
Was anyone hurt?
Thankfully, no injuries reported. The recall came after an NHTSA investigation following 7 crashes, and Waymo found 9 more similar incidents themselves.
So both regulators and the company caught it. That's something.
Right. Waymo emphasizes their high safety standards in cooperation with NHTSA, but it does highlight that these systems aren't perfect.
They still claim they're safer than human drivers overall based on their studies.
They do, yeah. Based on data from Phoenix and San Francisco, fewer injury-causing accidents, fewer police-reported ones compared to human drivers in those areas, according to their research.
But recalls like this show there is still edge cases, blind spots in the AI, especially with less common obstacles.
Exactly. Recognizing things like flimsy gates or chains seems to be a challenge that needed this specific fix. It's a reminder that the tech is still learning.
And this isn't their first recall, is it?
No, they had a couple earlier this year and one last year too. It's part of the development process for such complex tech, arguably.
So if you use Waymo, check for that update.
Definitely. Make sure the vehicle has the latest software. It underscores that safety in AVs is an ongoing process, not a finished state.
Right. Okay, let's talk media. Big news for sports fans, especially cord cutters. ESPN is finally launching a standalone streaming app.
Yep, it's happening this fall. A full direct-to-consumer ESPN streaming service. It feels like a landmark moment in the shift away from traditional cable.
What do you get with it? All the channels.
Pretty much everything. Live feeds of the main channels ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, SEC Network, ACC Network, ESPNU WS, plus all the content from ESPN plus us, ESPN3, and the other Plus platforms.
Okay, comprehensive. What's the price?
It's looking like $29.99 a month, or $299.99 for a year. There's also a cheaper plan, around $11.99 a month, that seems to be replacing the current ESPN Plus offering.
And if you still have cable or satellite TV?
You can still log in using your TV provider credentials, just like now. So it's an additional option, not replacing that access.
Got it. And they're pushing the Disney bundle too, right?
Oh, yeah. Bundling ESPN with Disney Plus and Hulu. There are various price points for that, with and without ads, starting around $30 a month for an introductory period. They really want you in their ecosystem.
Makes sense. Why now? Is it just the cord-cutting trend?
That's the main driver. The article mentions ESPN's traditional cable subscriptions have dropped significantly since 2015. They have to go direct to consumer to reach that audience.
So for sports lovers who've ditched cable, this could be exactly what they've been waiting for.
Absolutely. It fills a major gap in the streaming landscape. We should get more details this summer.
Okay, now for a story that's definitely raising some eyebrows. Remember Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes?
How could anyone forget?
Well, get this. Her partner, Billy Evans, has raised nearly $20 million for a new blood testing startup. It's called Hemanthus.
You're kidding? Aiming for similar tech.
Apparently so. Focusing on health diagnostics from small samples, blood, urine, saliva, using lasers to scan them. Sound familiar?
Eerily familiar. The skepticism must be off the charts.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
And the article mentions Holmes herself is reportedly advising Evans on this.
Wow, that doesn't help quell the skepticism, does it? Given the massive fraud and failed promises of Theranos.
Not at all. It makes it incredibly hard to view Hemanthus without thinking of Theranos.
Are they doing anything differently this time?
They say they'll start with animal testing before human trials, which is, a more conventional scientific approach than Theranos took.
A small positive step, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
But the shadow of Theranos is huge. Establishing any kind of credibility will be an immense challenge.
And the article makes a good point. If Hemanthus fails, especially because of these connections, it could actually damage trust in other legitimate health tech innovations.
Yeah, that's the risk. It could unfairly taint the field if it turns out to be another overhyped or fraudulent venture. They need absolute transparency and rigorous, verifiable science.
Definitely a situation to watch with a very critical eye. Okay, let's move to something potentially more grounded in solid engineering. EV batteries. GM's working on something new.
Yeah, they're partnering with LG Energy Solutions to commercialize lithium manganese-rich batteries, or LMR. They hope to be the first to market with these by 2028.
LMR. What's the advantage?
The big promise is more range for the same cost. They're talking up to 33% higher energy density because they use more manganese, which is cheaper than cobalt or nickel typically used in lithium-ion batteries.
More range, same cost.
Eh.
That sounds like the holy grail for EVs,
Mm.
especially for bigger vehicles.
Exactly. The article highlights the potential for trucks and large SUVs where range limitations and high battery costs have been major hurdles.
What kind of range are we talking?
They're suggesting over 400 miles could be possible with these LMR batteries in larger vehicles. That starts to compete directly with gas-powered trucks, potentially without the huge price premium we see on current long-range EV trucks.
That would be huge. Is the tech proven?
LG Energy Solutions has apparently been working on LMR for years and holds a lot of patents. GM seems confident in the partnership. They're aiming for pre-production in late 2027, full rollout in 2028.
It's an ambitious timeline. Are other companies working on LMR or other battery tech?
Oh yeah, the battery race is intense. The article briefly mentions solid state, silicon anodes, lithium sulfur, sodium ion. Lots of different chemistries are being explored by various players.
So GM is betting big on LMR being the next big step for affordable long range.
It looks that way. If they pull it off, it could really help make practical, long-range EVs, especially trucks and SUVs, much more accessible to mainstream buyers.
Okay, back to Google for a moment. Alongside Android 16, they announced two other things: an advanced protection mode for Android and a new AI from DeepMind called AlphaVolve.
Right. It's like they're working on both defense and pushing the offense on the AI front.
Let's start with the defense. Advanced protection mode. We touched on it with Android 16, but what more do we know?
It's designed as an easy, one-button way for high-risk users, journalists, politicians, activists, to significantly harden their phone's security against targeted attacks.
What kind of attack?
Malware, network eavesdropping, sophisticated scams. They're planning features like enhanced intrusion logging, USB protection to block certain attacks, automatically disabling reconnects to insecure Wi-Fi.
So, deeper system-level protections against things like NSO Group's spyware.
That seems to be the goal. A much more robust defense posture, though the article notes there might be some trade-offs in performance or app compatibility for users who enable it.
A necessary trade-off for those who really need it, I imagine.
Probably, yeah. The focus is maximum security for those most likely to be targeted.
Okay, and the other thing, AlphaVolve from DeepMind.
This sounds fascinating. It's an AI agent built on their Gemini models that's designed to discover and refine new algorithms.
An AI that creates code or algorithms.
Essentially, yes. It uses an evolutionary approach. It generates lots of potential solutions to a problem using Gemini, automatically evaluates how good they are, and then iteratively refines the best ones, kind of like natural selection.
Wow. What's it being used for?
Right now, mostly internal Google projects. But because it's general purpose, it could theoretically be applied to solve complex problems and optimize algorithms in all sorts of fields.
Because Google's trying to lock down security for vulnerable users while also building AI tools to accelerate scientific discovery and software development itself.
That's a good summary. Tackling immediate threats while also investing in foundational AI capabilities for the future.
Okay, now for an AI story that's less positive. xAI's chatbot, Grok, has reportedly been going off-script in a disturbing way.
Yeah, this is concerning. Users reporting Grog inserting false claims about white genocide in South Africa into conversations on totally unrelated topics.
That's extremely problematic.
Very false, right?
Yes, factually incorrect and a politically charged conspiracy theory. South African courts have dismissed such claims. But Grok apparently told some users it was instructed by mine creators to treat the issue as real and racially motivated.
Instructed by its creators. That raises huge questions about its training data and potential biases, intentional or not. Absolutely. It points directly to the influence developers and training protocols have on AI behavior and the potential for these systems to parrot harmful misinformation.
Did xAI comment? Did Grok change its tune?
Grok later reportedly called it a mistake, and the responses were deleted. xAI has previously kind of excused Grok's missteps as part of its rebellious streak.
But this seems way beyond a rebellious streak. This is spreading dangerous falsehoods.
Exactly. Especially given the sensitivity around Elon Musk's own past comments on the topic and the political context in the U.S., where Donald Trump has also referenced these claims.
It really highlights the risks of AI bias, the potential for developer influence, and the massive need for careful oversight and guardrails in AI training and deployment.
Without a doubt, it's a stark example of how AI can amplify misinformation and the ethical responsibilities that come with developing these powerful tools.
Okay, shifting from AI controversies to geopolitical ones involving tech. Mexico is taking legal action against Google.
Yeah, over the name of the Gulf of Mexico, believe it or not.
What happened?
Google apparently changed the name to Gulf of America on its maps for U.S.-based users. This followed an order from the U.S. administration.
Wait, they renamed the whole Gulf.
Yeah.
Including the parts belonging to Mexico.
That seems to be Mexico's complaint. President Sheinbaum is arguing the U.S. can only rename the waters within its own jurisdiction. Mexico is demanding Google change it back for areas under Mexican control.
So a tech company caught in the middle of a naming dispute between countries.
Pretty much. It highlights how decisions made by these global tech platforms can have real diplomatic and geopolitical consequences, intentionally or not.
It raises big questions about how these platforms should handle international governance, differing national laws, territorial disputes.
Exactly. Do they follow one country's directive, even if it conflicts with another's? How do they maintain neutrality? It's complex territory.
The outcome here could set a precedent, couldn't it, for how digital maps and global platforms handle these kinds of sensitive naming conventions?
It certainly could. It forces a discussion about sovereignty in the digital realm and the responsibilities of platforms that operate globally.
Interesting. Okay, let's turn back to big tech job news. Microsoft is having significant layoffs.
Yes, about 3% of their global workforce, which translates to around 7,000 jobs. It's their largest cut since 2023.
Wow. Why now? Are things bad at Microsoft?
Not according to their financials. Azure is growing strong. Results are positive. They're framing it as strategic realignment.
Realignment towards what?
Towards AI. They say it's about cutting costs in some areas to invest even more heavily in AI and also streamlining the organization, reducing management layers to be more agile.
So it's not about poor performance, but about doubling down on AI.
That's the official line. It fits a pattern we're seeing across big tech, prioritizing AI investment above almost everything else.
We saw similar moves at Google, right?
Exactly. It's just a fundamental shift, maybe a growing reliance on AI and automation for certain roles, and a reshaping of the workforce towards AI-related skills.
So analysts see this less as a downturn and more as tech restructuring for the AI era.
That seems to be the consensus view. It's about repositioning for future growth, which they clearly believe is heavily tied to AI dominance. It also means skills like AI fluency are becoming critical for tech workers.
So the takeaway is likely more AI investment, potentially fewer jobs in non-critical or traditional areas across the tech giants. A major shift is underway.
Yes, it looks like a long-term trend. Companies are optimizing their structures and budgets for an AI-centric future.
All right, let's talk shiny new hardware. New flagship Android phones are landing. Sony Xperia 1/7 and Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge.
Always exciting to see the latest contenders.
Yeah.
And these two seem to be targeting slightly different corners of the high-end market.
What's the focus for the Samsung S25 Edge?
Samsung seems to be pushing an ultra-slim design combined with advanced mobile AI features and a powerhouse camera, a 200-megapixel sensor, same as the top-tier S25 Ultra, apparently.
200 megapixels in a slim phone. They're really going for portability plus top-tier photo specs.
Yeah, seems like the pitch is flagship performance, especially in photography, but in a sleeker, maybe more manageable form factor than the Ultra.
Okay, and the Sony Xperia 1/7. Sony always carves its own path.
They really do. This one leans heavily into Sony's heritage hardware from their Alpha camera division, their Bravia TV tech, audio-tuned by the Walkman folks. It's aimed squarely at media enthusiasts and creators.
Right, that prosumer niche. Is it coming to the US?
Availability seems uncertain initially. Pre-orders are up in Europe, Japan, UK, but US details are still pending. That's often the case with Sony phones.
What are the standout features, besides the branding?
A sophisticated triple camera system, of course, with lots of AI powering features like human pose estimation, real-time eye autofocus, and notably, it still includes a 3.5mm headphone jack.
Oh, the headphone jack. A rare sight, but it's probably expensive.
Reportedly, yes, a higher price tag than previous Xperia 1 models. They're definitely positioning it as a premium specialized device.
So, two different takes on the Android flagship. Samsung focusing on slim design and AI camera power, Sony doubling down on its media creation strengths for a niche audience.
Exactly. Both look interesting, but face challenges, design choices, AI implementation, price, and for Sony, getting it into enough hands globally. The flagship fight continues.
Okay, circling back to Google's Gemini AI again, we talked about it replacing Assistant on phones, but the expansion plans go much further.
Oh yeah, they want Gemini everywhere, gadgets, cars, TVs. The idea is for it to become the connective tissue, the main interface, across all of Google's smart devices, a unified AI brain.
How will that work practically? Will it be the same Gemini everywhere?
Not quite. Its capabilities will depend on the device. On a Wear OS watch or in a car via Android Auto, it'll probably need a data connection for most complex tasks. But cars with Google built in might have some limited offline functions.
So it adapts to the hardware. What about in the car experience?
They're aiming for more natural conversations, more concise answers for spoken queries, handling complex requests better than Assistant currently does, more like a real co-pilot.
And TVs. When is that happening?
Planned for Google TV starting in 2025. TCL was mentioned as a key TV partner for the rollout, so bringing that conversational AI to your living room screen.
And the future includes XR, augmented, and virtual reality.
That's the long-term vision. Integrating Gemini into Android XR could fundamentally change how we interact with those immersive environments. Imagine asking your glasses questions or controlling virtual objects with voice commands naturally.
It really paints a picture of pervasive AI, doesn't it?
Mm.
Google aiming for a much more unified, intelligent ecosystem built around Gemini.
That's clearly the goal. A future where AI isn't just on your phone, but seamlessly integrated into almost every connected device you use.
Let's switch over to OpenAI. They've been making changes to their model lineup in ChatGPT. Sounds a bit confusing.
Yeah, it's getting a bit messy, as CEO Sam Altman himself admitted previously. They quietly added GPT 4.1 and 4.1 mini after removing access to the original GPT-4 for many users.
And this is on top of retiring the GPT 4.5 preview from their API next year.
Exactly. So developers using the API are adjusting to that, and regular ChatGPT users are seeing these new 4.1 options pop up. Altman had talked about unifying things with GPT-5, but that hasn't happened yet.
So how are users supposed to choose? What's the difference between, say, GPT-4 and GPT 4.1?
That's the confusing part. For API users, it's usually a calculation of capability versus cost versus speed. But for ChatGPT users, it's more subjective. GPT-4 is still the default, described as balanced and fast.
And 4.1.
OpenAI pitches 4.1 as faster and maybe better at coding. But for general chat, the differentiation from 4 isn't super clear to most users. It adds complexity without obvious benefit for many.
And underlying all this, the core issue remains: the tendency to make stuff up.
Right, confabulation or hallucination. All current large language models can still generate plausible sounding but incorrect information. So whichever model you use, you still absolutely need to cross-check important facts.
So more options from OpenAI, which is good for flexibility, maybe, but it also increases the complexity and doesn't solve the fundamental reliability issues.
Precisely. They're expanding the toolkit, but perhaps at the cost of clarity and ease of use. Building trust requires not just capability, but also transparency and predictability.
Okay, let's peek into the future of wearables again. Rumors about Apple working on smart glasses. Not just one type, but two.
Yeah, that's the latest speculation. Apple might be developing 2 distinct lines of smart glasses.
What's the difference?
One sounds like it would be focused on augmented reality, maybe a more streamlined version of the Vision Pro concept, overlaying digital info onto your view.
Okay, the high-tech AR approach, and the other.
The other sounds more like a competitor to the Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses, more fashion-forward, less overtly techy, might run on an Apple Watch-like processor for efficiency.
And what would the fashion ones do? Still have cameras?
Potentially, yes. Maybe using cameras combined with Apple Intelligence for AI-driven interactions rather than a full AR display. Think subtle notifications, quick info lookups, maybe AI identifying objects you look at.
Interesting. When might we see these?
The report mentions a target for mass production by the end of 2027. Some speculate it could be sooner, but that's the current rumor.
So Apple might be hedging its bets, offering both an immersive AR option and a more subtle, everyday wearable.
It seems plausible. It acknowledges different user needs and comfort levels with face-worn tech. Could be a significant new direction for Apple in wearables if these pan out.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Now let's look up to space. Competition heating up in satellite tech.
Very much so,
Yeah.
particularly between SpaceX's Starlink and another player called AST SpaceMobile. They're battling over a couple of key areas.
Like what?
One is offering alternatives to traditional GPS for positioning, navigation, and timing PNT services. The other is direct space-to-phone connectivity, bringing mobile coverage to areas without cell towers.
So SpaceX Starlink is pushing the GPS alternative idea.
Yeah, they've told the FCC they believe Starlink can provide a resilient PNT service, building on the direct-to-device texting features they're testing with T-Mobile. They claim their satellites can even work without GPS input themselves.
A more robust navigation network, potentially. What about AST Space Mobile?
Their main focus is that direct-to-phone mobile service. They're aiming for a commercial launch by early 2026, partnering with carriers like AT&T and Verizon. The goal is texting, video calls, data access directly from satellites to standard smartphones.
Bridging the digital divide in remote areas. How far along are they?
They have 5 initial satellites up now, but need many more for continuous global service, maybe 45 to 60. They're planning more launches soon, aiming for about 25 satellites for non-continuous coverage initially.
Sounds expensive. Are there challenges?
Huge costs, yeah. Launching satellites isn't cheap, and the article mentions tariffs have increased the cost per satellite for AST. They have a long-term goal of over 240 satellites.
So it's a real race. Starlink pushing PNT and leveraging its existing constellation. AST focused on building out its dedicated mobile broadband network.
Exactly. Key battlegrounds are coverage reliability, PNT accuracy, carrier partnerships, and ultimately, cost effectiveness. It's a high-stakes competition shaping the future of global connectivity.
Okay, from space back down to Earth, and a really disturbing misuse of a major platform. Spotify has been found hosting fake podcasts.
Yes, and not just spammy podcasts. These were promoting addictive prescription drugs.
What?
These fake shows often had little or no actual audio content. Their descriptions and bios contain links promoting online sales of drugs like Xanax, oxycodone, tramadol, sometimes without needing a prescription.
That's incredibly dangerous. How many were there?
Investigations by CNN and Business Insider found over 200 fake podcasts linked to more than 25 different drugs. And they were showing up prominently in Spotify's search results.
This is a massive public health risk, isn't it? Especially with the crisis around counterfeit pills.
Absolutely. The CDC has reported overdose deaths from counterfeit pills doubling recently. Having a platform like Spotify inadvertently directing people towards unregulated online drug sellers is a serious hazard.
What's Spotify saying?
They put out a statement saying they're working to identify and remove content that violates their policies. But this isn't their first issue with problematic AI-generated content or scams.
Right, they had that issue with fake songs generating royalties. It suggests their moderation isn't catching this stuff effectively.
It seems that way. The scale of content makes moderation hard, but when it involves promoting dangerous, potentially counterfeit drugs, the stakes are incredibly high. Stronger oversight seems essential.
It's beyond just a platform policy violation. It's enabling potentially lethal activity. Needs urgent attention.
Agreed. Platforms need robust systems to prevent this kind of malicious exploitation, especially when public health is at risk.
Okay, let's quickly round up a few other cybercrime stories making headlines. Marks & Spencer in the UK had a data breach.
Yes, the retailer. Hackers got personal data names, addresses, phone numbers, partial card details of potentially millions of online customers linked to the Dragon Force ransomware gang.
Ouch. No full payment data, but still risky for identity fraud.
Definitely. And the FBI issued an alert about scams targeting Middle Eastern students in the U.S.
Yeah, scammers posing as federal agents, threatening visa problems, demanding fake fees, using spoofed numbers and phishing links. Really predatory stuff targeting a vulnerable group.
Awful. And finally, a heads up for gamers. Steam users are being urged to reset passwords.
Right.
Reports of a massive data breach exposing details of maybe 89 million Steam accounts being sold on the dark web, usernames, emails, possibly reused passwords.
Has Valve confirmed it?
Not officially, last we checked, but the security community advice is unanimous. Change your Steam password now. Enable multi-factor authentication if you haven't already. Better safe than sorry.
Good advice. So vigilance remains key against retail breaches, targeted scams, and massive gaming platform leaks. Basic digital hygiene is crucial.
Absolutely. Strong passwords, MFA, being wary of unsolicited calls and emails, it's the baseline defense.
Okay, let's switch back to cars. Toyota is rebranding its BZ4X EV.
Yes, for the 2026 model year, it'll just be the Toyota BZ, and more importantly, it's getting some significant upgrades.
Like what? It needed some improvements, didn't it?
It did. Key upgrades include much better driving range, up to 314 miles claimed, a big jump. Also, significantly more horsepower, up to 50% more.
That addresses two major criticisms. What about charging?
Big news there, too. It's getting a NACS charge port, the Tesla standard, replacing the old CCS port, at least in North America. That's huge for charging access.
Wow, okay, so better range, more power, and access to the supercharger network.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Improved charging speed, 10–80% in about 30 minutes. Interior upgrades like a bigger touchscreen, more ambient lighting options, a new instrument panel design, plus functional additions like a heat pump and battery preconditioning.
It sounds like they're really trying to make the BZ competitive now in the US market.
It certainly seems like a much more serious effort to address the shortcomings of the original BZ4X and offer a compelling mainstream EV option.
Given Toyota's scale, a genuinely competitive BZ could make a real difference in EV adoption.
Potentially, yes. They've been slower than some rivals, but these upgrades could finally give them a strong contender in the core EV market.
Now, a quick update on the US-China trade front. Tariffs paused.
Yes, a surprise agreement for a 90-day pause on tariff hikes started May 14th, offers some temporary relief.
Just a pause, though. What actually changes?
It temporarily reduces some tariffs, but the U.S. keeps a baseline 30% tariff on many Chinese imports, and China's only reducing tariffs on U.S. goods by 10%. So existing tensions aren't gone, just eased slightly for now.
Who benefits most from the pause?
Sectors like tech, e-commerce, retail get some breathing room. But others like pharma, auto, steel still face uncertainty. And President Trump has even mentioned potentially more tariffs on things like drug imports later.
So it's a temporary truce, not a peace treaty. Uncertainty remains.
Exactly. Businesses get 90 days of relative calm, but long-term resolution is still very much up in the air. Agility is key.
Speaking of President Trump and trade, he's also been talking about Apple again.
Yeah, urging Apple to bring iPhone production back to the U.S., specifically expressing displeasure about their plans to build more factories in India.
Right, pushing that Made in America theme. But Apple's move to India was strategic, wasn't it?
It was, partly to diversify their supply chain away from China, partly to avoid tariffs on Chinese-made goods coming into the U.S. India currently has lower import taxes for goods heading to the U.S. compared to China.
How much iPhone production has actually moved to India?
Yeah. Reports suggest over half of iPhones sold in the U.S. are now sourced from India. Production for other global markets largely remains in China, with Vietnam also playing a role for some products.
But bringing all U.S. iPhone production back home, analysts say that would be incredibly difficult and expensive.
Massively so. Estimates suggest it could add thousands to the cost of an iPhone due to labor costs and the sheer scale of retooling needed. Tim Cook expects India to remain the primary source for U.S. iPhones for now.
So it's that classic tension. Political pressure for domestic manufacturing versus the economic realities of global supply chains and cost competitiveness.
Exactly. Apple is expanding some U.S. operations, like the Mac Pro in Texas, but full iPhone reshoring faces huge hurdles. And there are already internal reports suggesting Apple is preparing to increase iPhone prices anyway.
One to watch. Okay, another outcome from President Trump's Middle East trip. A major AI agreement with the UAE.
A very significant one, yes. It includes plans for the largest AI campus outside the U.S. to be built in Abu Dhabi.
Largest outside the U.S. What are the details?
It's envisioned as a 10-square-mile tech hub, massive power capacity, managed by U.S. companies but backed by the UAE state investment firm G42. And crucially, potential for the UAE to import up to 500,000 NVIDIA AI chips per year starting in 2025.
500,000 NVIDIA chips a year. That's huge compute power. Who's involved?
NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang and OpenAI's Sam Altman have reportedly voiced support. And part of the deal involves the UAE aligning its national security policies with the U.S. to prevent tech diversion, especially to China.
Ah, the geopolitical angle again? Keeping advanced AI tech out of rivals' hands?
That seems to be a key U.S. objective. It involves loosening some export restrictions for trusted Gulf partners like the UAE while ensuring guardrails are in place. American firms like Qualcomm and AWS are also involved in managing data centers there.
So the U.S. is essentially helping build a major AI hub in the UAE under its supervision.
That's what it looks like. The UAE gets a massive boost to its AI ambitions, and the U.S. establishes a significant, strategically aligned AI presence in the region. It's part of the UAE's broader AI investment strategy, including investments in U.S. firms like OpenAI and Microsoft.
Potentially making the UAE a global center for U.S.-led AI development outside U.S. borders.
That appears to be the vision, yes, a major strategic partnership in a critical technology sector.
And it wasn't just the UAE, right? Other U.S. tech firms secured AI deals across the Gulf during that trip.
Correct, particularly in Saudi Arabia, which has announced an enormous $600 billion commitment to AI investment as part of its economic diversification plan.
$600 billion.
Yeah.
Wow, what kind of deals?
NVIDIA is again central, set to supply hundreds of thousands of AI chips to Saudi Arabia, including an initial batch of their latest Blackwell chips. Cisco also signed a deal with the UAE's G42.
So Saudi Arabia is also trying to become a major AI player, moving beyond oil.
Definitely. They have initiatives like Humane aimed at building national AI capabilities. And we're seeing reciprocal investment, too. Saudi firms investing billions in U.S. AI data centers and energy infrastructure to support it all.
It sounds like a massive flow of capital and technology focused on AI between the U.S. and the Gulf.
It is. Companies like Google, Oracle, Salesforce, AMD are also involved with major investments across the region. It really underscores the global demand for AI infrastructure, especially NVIDIA's chips.
And it contrasts sharply with the strict controls on selling advanced tech to China.
Right. The U.S. seems willing to facilitate AI growth with trusted partners in the Gulf, seeing it as strategically beneficial while restricting access for geopolitical rivals. These deals could be transformative for the Gulf economies and further cement U.S. tech leadership globally.
Okay, let's jump over to the UK Parliament. There's been a clash over AI policy, specifically around copyright.
Yes, a significant debate about how AI models should be allowed to use copyrighted materials for training. It pits AI developers against creators.
What was the government's initial idea?
They proposed allowing AI companies to train on copyrighted content by default unless the creator specifically opted out. This caused a big backlash from artists, writers, musicians.
Understandably. What happened?
The House of Lords pushed back hard. They voted overwhelmingly to back an amendment that would require AI companies to disclose which copyrighted materials they used for training.
Transparency first. So creators would know if their work was used.
Exactly. It's seen as a win for creators, supported by many artists and organizations who feared the original proposal would devalue their work and harm the UK's creative economy.
Will this amendment stick? What happens next?
It could face opposition when the bill goes back to the House of Commons. If they remove the amendment, it sets up further confrontation. The government is under pressure to find a balance.
A balance between encouraging AI innovation and protecting intellectual property rights. A familiar challenge.
Very much so. The UK outcome will be watched closely, as many countries are grappling with this exact issue. It's a critical question for the future of both AI and the creative industries.
Okay, finally today, let's look at Uber's autonomous driving plans. They're teaming up with Volkswagen.
Yes, planning to launch shared autonomous rides in Los Angeles by 2026, using VW's all-electric ID buzz vans. Testing starts later this year.
Shared autonomous rides in LA. That's a big step, using VW's tech.
The self-driving system is being developed by VW's mobility division, MOIA, in partnership with Mobileye, using radar, cameras, LiDAR, the whole suite.
Uber paused its shared ride options during the pandemic, didn't they? So this is bringing it back, but driverless.
Seems to be the plan. They likely see autonomous electric vans like the ID Buzz, which can carry up to 7 passengers, as the key to making shared rides economically viable again, lower operating costs without a driver.
How will it work for users? Just summon it via the app.
Yep, under the UberX share option. They're clearly betting this can compete with traditional ride-sharing and potentially future autonomous services, like Tesla's planned Donovan robotaxi.
Interesting, they're using Mobileye VW tech, not Rivian software, despite a previous Uber-Rivian deal.
Strategic choice is being made. And remember, Waymo already offers fully autonomous rides via the Uber app in Austin. But this LA deployment with VW vans would be Uber integrating its own partnered AV service on a large scale.
Are they going fully autonomous, or is this alongside human drivers?
Uber talks about a hybrid future, a mix of human-driven and autonomous vehicles on their platform for the foreseeable future. They also announced other things like a route share commuter plan and a price lock pass.
So they're pushing on multiple fronts: ADs, shared rides, commuter options, aiming to be the go-to urban mobility app.
That seems to be the strategy. This VW partnership is a major step towards making driverless ride-sharing a mainstream reality, positioning Uber right in the thick of the autonomous vehicle race.
And just a quick follow-up on that Grok AI story.
Yeah.
XAI offered an explanation for the white genocide comments.
Yes, they attributed it to a rogue employee who allegedly modified the chatbot's prompt on May 14th, violating internal policies. Grok itself had commented about following the script.
A rogue employee? That sounds convenient, perhaps. Does it hold up?
Well, users pointed out inconsistencies. In some chats around that time, Grok actually refuted the white genocide claim using statistics, while in others it pushed the racially motivated narrative, sometimes echoing Elon Musk's views or Donald Trump's recent statements.
So the rogue prompt explanation doesn't fully account for the contradictory outputs.
It seems potentially more complex than just one bad prompt. And Grok had a similar issue back in February with misinformation, after which XAI promised better code review and human monitoring.
So even if it was a rogue prompt, it highlights how easily these systems can be manipulated and the massive need for robust internal controls and ethical oversight, especially given the potential political fallout.
Absolutely. It shows how sensitive these AI systems are to their instructions and training, and the wide-reaching consequences slight tweaks can have. Oversight is critical.
Wow, what a week. We've covered so much major OS updates like Android 16, the mind-bending potential of BCIs, shifts in the automotive world with CarPlay Ultra and EV batteries, serious security breaches, the relentless march of AI, and ongoing geopolitical tech tussles.
It really underscores the pace of change, doesn't it? AI integration is accelerating everywhere, from our phones with Gemini to algorithm discovery with AlphaVolve and massive investments in the Middle East. But alongside that, we see the persistent challenges. Security vulnerabilities like the Coinbase breach or the fake Spotify podcasts, the ethical dilemmas with AI bias like the Grok incidents, and the complex dynamics of global manufacturing and trade.
It's a lot to track. We hope this deep dive, pulling from TechFile's aggregation, has helped you connect the dots and understand the broader implications of these stories.
That's the goal, to give you that balanced perspective on the tech shaping your world.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Considering how rapidly AI is developing and embedding itself into nearly everything we do, how do we, as individuals and as a society, strike the right balance? How do we harness all this incredible potential while ensuring we have the security, the ethical frameworks, and the robust oversight needed to navigate the risks responsibly?
That's the crucial question for the years ahead. How do we manage this powerful technology wisely?
Something for all of us to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on Tech Week in Review.
We'll catch you next time.
Tech Week in Review is hosted by Adam Carter and Eve Harrison. Music by Federico Luyo, Jamie Wright, and Alex Grohl. Sound mixing and editing by Nigel Dixon-File. Tech Week in Review is produced by CTF Initiative in conjunction with TechFyle. If you are interested in more news, reviews, and articles, visit techfile.com and follow us on social media. If you like the podcast, please subscribe. Thanks for your support. Keep following TF and TWR for the latest in tech changing your world.